Hi, everybody. It's another Conversations With, and I'm delighted to have my good friend John Paul, who's with me today. And as we know, John is with AAA. And before we finish the program today, because I got a plethora of things to talk about that are exciting, but I want to talk about that because one of the things that amazed me is the number of people who I've seen, especially with this winter that we're having, with temperatures up one day and down the next, and as even now, the automobiles aren't mechanical anymore. They're almost all computerized, and they run in a whole different. They're all electronic.
Oh,
and,
sure, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
And people who do not have AAA, I scratch my head. And it's because, boy, if you have, especially with multiple automobiles, where if you got a couple of kids and there's 3 cars in the house.
Yeah, give them all AAA memberships,
Yeah.
and we talk about it a lot with kids and with anybody really. If I'm in your car and your car breaks down, you got a flat tire, and you don't have AAA, I do, so at least I can call up and say, hey, I got a flat tire, and I'm in this car, and they'll come over and they'll take care of it. So not to be too self-promotional, but that's one of the reasons I've been there for 30 plus years, because we have a good product.
But that's the point, John. You know, it's not something that you'll never use. How many people can say, I never had a flat tire?
Yep.
How many people went out on the first brutally cold November morning and got rup for the first time?
Yeah, well, I can tell you a lot, about 70% more than we usually see on a normal morning. So a lot of people do forget, and part of the reason is cars today when they run well, they run perfect.
Yeah.
And it's not like the old days where you could feel your car starting to run a little worse, a little worse. Didn't start quite as good.
No.
But now with all the electronics, like you said, all the electronics in the car, there's more electronics in your car than there is in the space shuttle.
Yeah.
You know, when the first space shuttle didn't have as much electronics in it as your car does.
That's right.
So you look at that and you say, well, if my car has more electronics than a space shuttle or a 727, who's going to fix it? How do I get it fixed? But yeah, you're right. And the thing that happens is people sort of forget a little bit until their car breaks down, and then all of a sudden they're panicked because they don't have AAA or they don't have a good mechanic even that can come out and help them if they have a problem.
Right.
Absolutely.
So that's important.
Thank you.
But anyway, I was telling some people the other day, and I think you'll enjoy the story. It was at church, as a matter of fact, over the weekend, about the program. And and one of the gentlemen was in the little group we were chatting. Oh, I got a question, and he said, because I'm wrestling right now with, do I trade my car in? Because I love this car.
Yeah.
Well, I gave him, when he said he loves his car, I said, no, you love your wife, you love your kids, it's a car. You don't love your car. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, a lot of people love their cars. A lot of people love their cars.
He said, I forget how many years. He said, at what point in time do I start sending good money after bad? He said, I'm at the point where I've had to do this and I've had to do that. And I said, well, no, brakes and tires, that's normal wear.
That's normal wear and tear.
You know, but and windshield wipers, I'm not worried about it. No, he says, but, it's getting to a point now where he says, that transmission's noisy, and I know I'm faced with that baby, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, then that's the problem. I said, if your car is now a 10-year-old car, the last time they made a transmission for that car was 10 years ago. I said, so you're going to go buy a used transmission. How do you know when you're going to get a used or a rebuilt?
It's always a hard question to answer. But in general, it's always cheaper to fix an old car than it is to buy a new one. So if you have a car that you've had it for, the average car on the road today, the average, is almost 12 years old when you factor in cars and trucks together. So people are keeping their cars a lot longer. In fact, they're keeping them longer than they ever have because they are more dependable. Yeah. But at 10 or 11 or 12 years old, your car isn't worth a whole lot of money. But if you said, well, I'm going to go out and buy the cheapest new car out there, you're probably going to spend $18,000 for the cheapest new car out there.
That's right.
For $18,000, you can put a lot of repairs into your car. But the difference is, if at some point, if you say it's time to replace this car, is it dependable? Well, it's not dependable, but I can spend money and I can make it dependable. Is it as safe as the new cars out on the road today? Probably not, because you can get a lot more safety features today than you can. One of the things that really makes people usually trade cars is they get tired of looking at the same steering wheel for, 5, 6, 7, 8 years in a
that's
row,
right.
and they're driving down the road and they're like, I'm kind of getting tired of this car, and so it's time to move on. But yeah, if you're doing mechanical things, like you said, the transmission, well, you can get a rebuilt transmission that the only thing original in it is the case itself.
Yeah.
So it has all new wear parts, all new
Yeah.
bearings. So it's essentially a brand new transmission
Right.
in an old box. So you can get, $4,000, you can get a new transmission. $5,000 or $6,000, you can probably get a new engine.
Yeah.
So you say, well, I got most of the big things covered. Mechanically, you can always do a fair amount of things. It's when the body of the car starts to go.
Yeah, see,
When it
that's what I was
starts
getting
to rust and rot, and surface rust is one thing. You look at it, you got a couple of holes and rusty spots. You can take, but when it starts to be structural, you'll spend tens of thousands of dollars to try to fix structural repairs. And at that point, you have to say, I have this 10, 12-year-old car, I'll put $5,000 into it, and maybe I'll get another 3 or 4 years. But if you have a 10 or 12-year-old car and you say, well, it's going to need a transmission, and they put it up on a lift and they go, yeah, but it's also the frame starting to rot out, or the subframe starting to rot out. And yeah, we can fix it, but it's only going to be temporary, because most of the time a rust repair, unless it's done really, really well, is always going to come back to haunt you a few years later. So when it starts to look at structural issues, and we're starting to see that, the amount of stuff we put on the roads today so they don't freeze. It used to be we put sand down, then we put salt down. Now we put sodium chloride down, and that tends to be really aggressive against iron and steel, and it really is causing some rust in cars that we've never seen before.
Right.
So when you put those chemicals on the road and you combine it with age and sand and salt and moisture on the roads, and we don't think about it, but we're close enough where we get salt air from the ocean and all of that. You put all those together, and that's when it's time to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Like I said, you can always look at a car and say, well, I had to put $2,000 into the steering and this much into the engine, and it's still a whole lot cheaper than a new car, and it might get you another few years without payments, but when it starts to get structurally bad, then it's time to get rid of it.
Well, the other thing, too, I do a program with an investment banker at the end of the month.
Yep.
Michael Carnival is his name, one of our very popular programs. And we always talk during that program. And Michael points out, as an investment banker, if you watch, in fact, if it wasn't for automobile industry, television would go bankrupt.
Yeah.
I mean, there's five or six in a row. He says, they're begging you to take a new car.
Mm-hmm.
They're offering 0.9, 1.9.
Sometimes zero.
Yeah, sometimes 0%. He says that some of those Subarus that are $24,999 are an incredible buy.
Right.
I mean, it's an incredible, and so they're begging you to take a new car, and they're almost giving them away.
Right.
And so to that point, but to your point, especially in this area, and you mentioned the roads, you drive your car, and just take the last 35 or 40 days of the weather that we've experienced here in New England.
Yeah, we got some winter.
And all that up underneath that car,
Yeah, oh, sure, yeah.
you never see.
Yeah.
And it sometimes just sits up there all day long,
yeah.
And in fact, the first really cold, that morning it went down to like, wind chill was like 8 below.
Right.
I have that electronic shifting in the Mercedes. And I hit the little thing to go down, it didn't move. I went, and so my wife ran in and got on the computer, and it says, let the car warm up for about 25 or 30 minutes, and it will do it. So we just let the car warm up, and it started to work. But that first panic, I can't shift, and so all of those things, and it's really interesting because you can sit in a situation where you can ultimately start pouring a lot of money into a car that's no longer you couldn't get your money back in 100 years.
No, and it's absolutely, if you have to look at certain things, but sometimes they look at payments, and people today are financing cars longer than they ever have. 7-year loans on cars, 8-year loans on cars.
But then what they don't realize is about the 4th year in, they're upside down.
Oh yeah, and they don't have.
And then they can't get out.
Yep, and that's why your financial investor would probably say, buy a 1-year-old car, let somebody take the first 20 or 25% depreciation on
Yeah.
it, and then you have a car that's almost brand new.
Yeah.
It's got most of the warranty left on
Right.
it, and you don't really need to worry about it. And and there are a lot of people that only.
Well, I'll give you an example. My wife, Jen's car, she has a 2015 C300 4MATIC.
Yep.
Loaded. Backup camera.
Yeah,
It whistles Dixie. If
Yep,
anybody
yep,
comes
yep.
near it, it toots a horn and
yep.
keeps her moving and everything.
Yep.
Great car. She loves it. She's got 34,000 miles on it. Way low. Still has the original warranties on
Yep.
it. And she saw these in 2017. They came out with a little two-door.
Yep.
A coupe, C300 coupe. Loves it. Perfect for her.
Yep.
She, can't wait to get one. And they're starting to come in. A lot of them are coming back on leases.
Right.
Well, I saw one the other day, 7,200 miles on it.
Yep.
It's already 2.5 years old. Okay? There's the car that you can go in. You can buy that car. You can get a great deal on it.
Yep.
And she puts about, 8,000 miles a year on a car. She works nearby here.
Yep.
And so, perfect for her.
Yep.
And she'll drive it for 2 or 3 years, put that much mileage
Yep.
on it. It's still way low.
Yeah.
The dealer will take it in
Take
2
back. Oh,
seconds.
sure, yeah.
He can sell that
Yeah,
like this.
and it's funny too. It's people think of Mercedes and other luxury cars.
Yeah.
Mercedes, same thing. They don't hold their value that well when that first year or so.
No, they don't.
And in fact, someone wrote to me this week, and they said, "Is it really worth buying a Cadillac anymore?" And I said, and they said, "Well, I went out and bought a 2017 brand new Cadillac XTS."
Yeah.
He said, "I paid $59,000 for it. I went to see about trading it in, and I was offered $31,000 for it." And he said, where did all the value go?
Yeah.
And I said, well, you don't have to feel bad, because I looked up a Mercedes E-Class,
Yeah.
a BMW, and I said, those are right up there as far as losers in the first year or so,
Yeah,
too.
right.
So if you can wait a little bit and get something that's a year or so old, and you don't mind not, some people just, sometime in their life, I guess, everybody should buy a brand new car.
Yeah.
See what it feels like to be the
Yeah.
first person that's ever sat in it. Enjoy it, because you're the first one that ever programmed the radio.
Yeah.
Everybody should do that once.
Yeah.
But do you really need to do that? Not really. How do you feel the first time you get in your car and you notice a little dent or a ding? You feel terrible. Well, if you get it with a little dent or a ding, you don't think much of it.
No,
So it's fine. So for a lot of people, they can
Yeah.
used car is a great way to go. But going back to your original question, at what point do you spend too much money on a car? Yeah, you have to look at it and say, if my car payments are $350 a month, I work with somebody whose car payments are $650 a month. I don't know how they can afford to do it, but even half of that, 300 and some
Yeah.
odd a month, and over the course of a year, you're gonna spend $3,500 for car payments.
Yeah.
And if you have a fully paid for car that's 6, 7, 8 years old, and you had to put $3,000 or $4,000 into it, that's a year's worth of car payments. So
right.
for that, you can say, well, it still makes sense to do that if I can get another couple of years of trouble-free miles out of it. Back years ago, when I first came to work at AAA, we had something called the AAA Auto Diagnostic Center. And what it was a little 2-bay shop that people used to bring their cars to me, and I used to tell them what kind of shape they were in. Or if they were going to buy a used car, we'd look
Right.
at that. But part of what it was you would bring your car to me, and I'd look at it and go, Dick, I think this still has another couple of good years left in it.
Yeah.
Or else I'd look at it and go, it's got this wrong, it's leaking here, it's doing
Yeah.
this, it's got this wear here. Or else sometimes it was just like, I don't know how to say it, but it just feels worn out.
Yeah.
There's nothing really terribly wrong with it. It just feels like it's getting old,
Yeah.
and maybe it's time to start to think about a new car. So we did that until we moved our office to Providence, Rhode Island. But we had that, and we probably looked at 100 cars a week for 15 years. So we looked at a lot of cars,
Yeah.
and just try to help people. So I used to say to people, if you're not sure, go to your mechanic where you trust. Go to your repair shop where you trust, and say to them, hey, look, I'm in between. I don't know. Should I keep it? Should I
Right.
get rid of it? What should I do? And just kind of look it over. Tell me how you think it's doing.
Yeah.
And if they say to you, you know what, I think it's maybe time to get rid of it, or if they say, well, look at it and say, no, it's in good shape. On the other hand, if they say, I think it's time to get rid of it. You interested in selling it?
Yeah.
Then maybe you might not want to get rid of it quite so
That's
fast.
right.
But yeah.
Well, you know, it's intriguing that you say that, because one of the things that always amazes me is how people will get an automobile and they'll absolutely, it's theirs.
Yep.
You know, and they protect it. At the same time, you know, you reach a point where it's time to move on. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really
Yeah.
is.
Oh, yeah,
And I always took the position, I tell people, you don't buy a new car, you lease it. You lease a new car, and you buy one that's a year or two old, and you always want to get the lowest mileage that you can find. And now, the other thing, too, in today's marketplace, with these services, I think it's Carfax, there's 2 or 3 different ones, you can get these things, and most dealers now offer them to you.
Yeah, because it's a
And
sales.
you can look
it's
it
a-
right up and it'll
It's
tell-
a sales tool for them.
Yeah.
I think it was Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate.
Yeah.
He said, always buy an appreciating asset and lease a depreciating asset.
Yeah.
And nothing's going to lose money faster than the car. So
No,
it
no.
kind of makes some sense to lease it if you're going to look brand new. And I was talking to somebody just this morning at work, and I walked by and I said, "Oh, I see you bought a new car." And she said, "Well, I sort of did." She said, "I leased it." And she said, "It was $169 a month." She said, "And it's a SUV with all the bells and whistles in it, and it beeps and chirps and does all those things." And she said, "For $3,500 down and $169 a month for 3 years," she said, "I have a brand new car that otherwise it would have cost me well more than twice that." And she said, "For me, a lease is a perfect thing."
You know, John, I want to speak about that, because a lot of people don't realize you have to be real careful with those leases.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
For instance, I average about 14 to 15,000 miles a year on a car. So the leases are 10,000 generally. There are some 12,
Right.
but 10.
Yeah.
So, but people don't realize you can buy the mileage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So when I used to lease my cars, I would say to the dealer, I want to figure it out for about 15.
Yeah.
Will you?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Are you sure you're going to do that?
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Yep.
I know I'm going to.
Yep.
You know, so and so it's a few dollars more, but at the end you don't get that whack.
Right. And the other thing, and it's not common today like it used to be, read all the fine print on the lease, because sometimes what it used to be was the lease looked real favorable, $99 a month.
Yeah.
And then the last lease payment was $4,999 a month.
Yeah.
You know, and
There was a balloon on it.
yeah, and what they would do is they look at that and they say, "Well, you owe $4,000." You know, and you say, "Well, I can't afford $4,000." So then they'd look to put you in another car, put that $4,000 towards the other car. Now all of a sudden, same thing. You're in kind of a backwards situation again with too much. You spent too much money on the car. So it does make complete sense to really look at what you have. You know, look at all the fine print, see if all the numbers work for you. That's what you really need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, next thing, we have situations today with gasoline
Yep.
where, for instance, some car manufacturers will say recommended.
Yep.
Others say must use 91.
Yep.
91 is sort of a oddball.
Yeah, it is.
In that
It is.
we have 89.
Yeah,
know,
you
we
have 87, 89, 93
93,
sometimes.
yeah. And however, the Gulf stations are putting in new panels,
Yeah.
I've noticed, and they have a 91, which is great. But what I was doing, because I said, how do I do this? I can't get 91.
Yeah.
Well, I figured out that the first time I would fill it, I would put 89 in it.
Yeah.
Then the next time I do it, it'd have 93.
Yeah.
And I just had to remember
Yeah,
it
just, yeah.
and go back
Yeah.
and forth. Now, economically, I mean, mathematically, it comes out right.
Yeah.
But economically, I save a lot of money.
You do, based on buying the premium, for
Yeah,
instance.
yeah.
So and it really does. You used all the right words, because if the car manufacturer says 91 octane required,
Yeah.
you have to use it.
Yeah.
If it says 91 octane, and a lot of vehicles today will say 91 octane recommended.
Yeah.
And what they mean by that is it's recommended to get the best fuel economy, it's
Yeah.
recommended to get the best engine performance. But the reality of it is, we did testing on about a dozen different cars, and we did it on a special chassis dynamometer, so like a treadmill for your
Yeah.
car, out in California, and we actually measured what happens to a car that was supposed to have, well, a Jeep Grand Cherokee. It's
Yeah.
supposed to have 91 octane gas.
Yeah.
It says recommends 91 octane gas. So we put 87 octane gas in. And we found in that particular car, the fuel economy dropped down a little bit, just maybe
Yeah.
a tenth of a mile per gallon. But it nowhere covered the cost of how much more you were paying for gas. So
Right.
even though you lost a smidge of gas mileage, you saved so much more money because you weren't paying 50 cents more
That's
a gallon.
right.
We also measured horsepower. And in one particular car, it developed about 275 horsepower. And when we used the lower grade gas, it developed about 265 horsepower. Well, for the average person, they're not going to notice 10 horsepower. It's not
Nope.
going to make any difference. It's kind of funny, on a Ford pickup truck with the new turbocharged V6 engine, when we went to the lower grade gasoline, fuel economy actually went up just a little bit. So just when we thought it would go the other way, it actually went up just a smidge. The horsepower actually went down just a little bit,
Yeah.
but the gas mileage went up. So kind of what we found out is really the bottom line is, if it says recommended, probably in 99% of the cases, use the 87 octane. You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
If you had a pickup truck and it said use 91 octane, and you were towing a boat or a horse trailer, or you're driving up to New Hampshire with a camping trailer on the back of it, yeah, maybe you want to use that to get every last horsepower out of that engine to take. But for the most part, your kind of fuzzy math of I'll put a half a tank of regular in and a half a tank of premium, you're doing kind of what the pump does, because years ago there was 3 tanks. There was a regular pump, a regular tank, a mid-grade tank, and a premium tank. And 99.9% of the gas station now, there's a regular tank and a premium tank, and it blends them together. The pump actually draws from each one and mixes them together. They use mixing pumps, and that's how they work. And that's why the new pumps at Cumberland Farms or Gulf, or can do. They're more accurate. And I was just recently in Florida, and they have all of those. And now we're starting to see more ethanol-free gas for boats.
Oh, wow.
And we're also starting to see higher ratios of ethanol gas. So you can get 15% ethanol, no ethanol, or 10% ethanol that's 87, 89, 91. So you look at the gas pump signs and you look and go, how many buttons are on this thing?
Yeah. Then you got to take a course at Harvard
exactly.
Business School to figure it out. But no, and the thing is, whether we like it or not, we are a mobile society.
Oh, sure, yeah.
We can't do anything without those automobiles.
Right.
And we absolutely.
And it's the same thing. Sometimes people complain about there's too many trucks on the road.
Yeah.
And you say to them, everything you touch today came on the back of a truck.
Oh yeah.
And you think about that, and you go, oh yeah. Well, if you take all the big trucks off the road and the box trucks off the road, how's that stuff going to get to you? And especially now when so many people buy stuff from Amazon and all that. Until the drones start dropping it off, it's going to come by truck.
Yeah, and then that's going to be the next.
Right.
The next fiasco with air travel.
Yeah.
With drones zipping around the place.
Oh yeah.
People be complaining. 3 in the morning, you'll have a drone coming down your driveway. Dropping off a package.
Dropping off as a package.
But when you think of it, I'm always reminded of an old saying I saw in 1939. The late great Albert Einstein said, "The more technology we develop, the more idiots we're going to create," and I think we've lived to see it in our society today. Computers have changed the world. Nothing is the same anymore.
No, and again, the amount of technology, somebody with a little phone, again, has a huge amount of computing power in their hand.
Oh yeah.
And when you start to, just like everything else, when you start to rely on it over and over again, you forget how to think sometimes.
That's right.
And I heard a report the other day that talked about people doing things. And it said, a lot of people go to YouTube and learn how to do something.
Yeah.
But they find out that they spend so much time trying to learn how to do it, they never actually do it. So we could end up with a whole bunch of society of people that watch videos on how to do things, but never actually get around to doing them.
I did a program. In fact, we did it here in the studio. We have a company that one of those Verizon,
Yeah.
but it's a local company,
Yeah.
Amcom, and they sell phones.
Yeah.
And I was in the store one day, and one of the customers came back mumbling and fumbling and almost in tears.
Yeah.
Got the new phone. And of course, when you're in the store, the man goes through everything.
Yeah.
And it'll do the,
Yeah.
it'll whistle Dixie backwards.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
It does,
yeah.
it stands on its end, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
yeah.
And then you get it home, and you actually use about 4%
Oh,
of
yeah.
what the phone
Yeah.
will really do.
Yeah.
Because you forget all the other
Right.
things. Well, this fella came back because he said, you showed me that I could do this. Please show me again.
Yeah.
And he was all confused. And so we actually did a program on all the things that your phone will actually do. If you just remember to
Yeah.
do
If
them.
you do, if you remember how to do them. Yeah.
How to do them, you know. And it was an interesting program. And so it's true. We offer all these, and even in automobiles. Look at the automobile we'll do for you today.
Right. Right.
You know,
And that's just it. We're trying to get a couple things. One is the technology in cars, like you mentioned, is so
Yeah.
advanced, but it has a different name in every car.
Oh, yeah.
So you know the kind of self-driving features. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
Tesla calls it an autopilot.
Parktronics, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Nissan calls it ProPilot.
well, it scared the heck out of you.
Yeah.
You're driving along, and all of a sudden goes beep 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 beep.
Yeah, yeah, and what happens is we would really like it that dealers would actually sit down and explain all these features to people so they have an idea what it could do.
Yeah.
You know, there's an old joke that went back years ago that somebody came in and bought a Cadillac and they said, you know, this thing's got automatic cruise control.
Yeah.
This thing pretty much drives itself. And a couple weeks later, it came in on the back of a wrecker, and they said, well, what happened to your car? And he said, well, you told me it drove itself. I rolled into the back seat and took a nap. Next thing I know, it was off the road. So, and today, it's almost the same thing. You hear of people that well, there was a guy who had too much to drink in a Tesla, and the car drove him home 6 miles.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was asleep or passed out.
Yeah. Well, you know, I happen to be on the local traffic board here, and we're looking at studies all
Yeah,
the time.
yeah.
Well, my first car was a 1941 Ford, and it had a little AM radio in the dashboard.
Yeah.
Today, the dashboard is like going to the movie theater, all right? And in the old days, 60% of the accidents were speed.
Yep.
Now it's 60% speed, and up to 30% is distraction.
Oh, distraction is a big thing.
Distractions are just
Yeah.
a nightmare.
Right.
People not paying attention with all that's
Yeah.
going on.
And that's why we're trying to, you know, the governor just came out with a safety proposal.
Yeah.
And one of the things was at least go to hands-free phones. So
Yeah.
so at least you have, in theory, 2 hands on the wheel.
That's right.
And you're not staring at your phone.
Right.
That would be a big help. And if we had a primary seatbelt law in Massachusetts, that would be a big help.
Oh, yeah.
Because another 10% or so people would put their seatbelt on just because it's the law.
That's
right
right.
now, people are like, the chance that I'm never going to get stopped for not wearing my seatbelt, so I won't.
well,
So if we can get people to
it'll
wear their
save your life.
seatbelt, we get
'Cause
people, if we get people to wear their seatbelt and put their
Yeah.
phones down, the roads would be a lot safer.
Well, we're running out of time, but the next time I want to talk to you about is I've noticed that some of the big I own everything car dealers
Yep.
are offering now a 20-year, 200,000 mile guarantee
Yep.
on their automobile.
Yep.
We need to talk about
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
Because some poor fella is going to really think he's got one of those, and until it's time
Yep.
time to go back and,
Yep.
oh, well, you didn't change the
Yep.
oil every week. You didn't do this, you didn't know, so.
Like the old Midas commercial with the
Yeah.
guy who used to come in and get a new muffler every
Yeah,
once in a while.
yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Not anymore. Well, John, thanks so much. It was
Oh,
just delightful.
absolutely, Dave.
And once again, folks, AAA. I can't tell you. I have it. My wife's got it. My kids all have it. From the day they first got their car, the first thing they got before they got their license was their. I put them on my AAA plan.
And thank you for
Well, you know, you just need them once, and it's worth it. When you, 'cause it's not going to happen on a beautiful summer day in the spring with the birds chirping. It's going to be February 18th when it's 4 below. That's when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, and that's when you need them the most. John, thanks again.
thank you.
And we'll see you next month.
Absolutely.
We'll be here. There you are, folks, other conversations with.